Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Feazell, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show, where truth matters. You can find us on television, channel 182 on Charter Communications, Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Don't forget the podcast at thenewscasters.com. And send emails, by the way. I love your emails. You know, we've got a lot of smart folks in our audience. They are really something else. So they come up with ideas for host shows, and making things, gardening, it could be politics, it could be just all kinds of things. And one of them was to come here to the Gadsden Mall. I said, why don't you come to a place at least once a week to the Gadsden Mall? I think it was probably somebody who owns a business here. But anyway, I am here at the Gadsden Mall. I have my friend Allen Mendenhall with me right now, and Allen is an author and a speaker. Now you are also, let's talk about all the other things you do.
Well, I am Associate Dean of the Sorrell College of Business at Troy University and Executive Director of the Manuel H. Johnson Center for Political Economy, which is a research and educational entity within the Sorrell College of Business at Troy. We do educational programming, we have a master's program in economics, and we do different studies and reports and research on economic matters affecting particularly Alabama, but the broader Southeast.
And it's a wonderful thing. Before we get started, though, I'm going to go ahead and let folks look at this poster. So I'm just going to reach right here. You are an author and a speaker, and I see it too well.
Yeah, the book. You can do the book might even be easier. Look at
that
that.
would be a lot easier.
Let's try that.
Okay, so let's talk about this book. So it's new, right?
That's correct. Yes, it's a new novel. It was published in November of 2023, so it's been out a few months, and my first novel, actually. So it was my 8th book, but my first novel, and it is based on ancient Greek tragedy loosely. It's a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, and it's in the Southern Gothic genre. So it deals with the grotesque, it deals with kind of a dark story involving a trial, and something like To Kill a Mockingbird, in which the characters go about different activities and different things happen to them while they're at school, when they come home from school, but the plot centers around this trial, and the trial results in a tragedy.
So I know before, I raise all kinds of herbs and stuff like that. So I mentioned that I actually have a hemlock tree, and you mentioned Socrates.
Well, I thought when you said hemlock, I was thinking Socrates, who drank hemlock to die, and you were telling me I like to put hemlock in my drinks to take care of. I'm like, well, that would be a cure from which you don't awake.
That would be the ultimate cure. Absolutely.
I was a little concerned at first.
So you intrigued me because I love your writing anyway, but this book is I got to get it here. So while it's out here, now you're at the mall right now, but folks can now actually buy your book online.
Anywhere. My website, www.allenmendenhall.com. Amazon.com is probably the easiest place to buy it. If you put in my name, Allen, Allen, Mendenhall, Mendenhall, you'll see all my books available on Amazon. But this novel is currently my favorite of all the books because it is a novel. It's very different to write a novel.
You had mentioned to me, I know you told your wife first. You told me second. You were thinking about writing a novel a few months ago, or maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad it came to fruition.
Well, it took a long time to write. I actually started writing this before I started writing any of my other books. And I came out with 7 books before I finished this one. So it took me years and years. The idea for it occurred to me when I was a law student, and I had read a case in my criminal law class involving the issue of statutory rape, and I think the case took place in Chicago or something. I don't actually remember. I never went back and reread the case that inspired the story because I didn't want the real case to cloud whatever narrative had popped up in my head. I wanted my narrative to be pure and my own, and so I never went back and read that other one. But the idea for the case, for the story, came to me after reading that case. Well, I had written a short story, and it was too long. It didn't hang together. I couldn't publish it anywhere because it was too long to be a short story. But now I knew what to do with all those characters from the short story. I would plug them into this plot involving the case, and voila, that was how the novel came about. It just took me years of fits and starts to hang it all together as one plot, one story.
So how different was it writing a novel plus the other things you've written?
Well, I find research to be easier. If I'm trying to do academic research, I can engage with the argument of some other person. Somebody says something, and inside I think, oh, no, that's wrong. I need to refute that and rebut that. So I'll get to work and I'll start looking for data to refute these statistics, and I'll look for an argument and I piece things together. And that's how the academic project works. It's a lot of research and plugging things in and summarizing what somebody said and making your own argument. And that is so much easier than just coming up with a fictional tale from scratch and creating a world out of nothing. That to me is more difficult, especially if you have high standards of aesthetics. And I wanted this book to sing.
You have to know it. Okay.
I wanted the prose to stand out in this particular book. And so I spent a lot of time redoing sentences, tinkering with words, trying to make everything just right. And that made the book take longer to reach fruition. But I'm very happy with the final product. I love the cover. The cover, actually, I told the publisher, I sent him pictures of Quentin Tarantino film posters, and I said, see how these look kind of retro, and they're in these weird, like mustard yellow and weird red colors, and they look very 70s. I want a cover that looks like that.
Watch it. He says retro 70s. Well, that's when I grew up.
Well, that's the 70s style. How the 70s style was.
And best music ever was in the 70s.
Well,
I'm sorry. You got your young stuff.
Look,
the 70s.
When my kids and I do karaoke in the house, karaoke, as they say in Japan, we put it up on the big screen TV, and we sit there on the couch and we will sing, and it's always 70s. They always start with the Bee Gees.
Of course.
They love the Bee Gees.
Staying alive. Even if somebody's having a heart attack.
Yeah, that's what staying alive. I have heard that. That's what you do. Yeah. But they like, how deep is your love? How deep is your love?
We had the coolest music.
Yeah.
Well, so I get your idea about the retro, and I really love. Now, to me, this looks more like 1950s.
Well, it takes place in the early 70s. Mm-hmm. So that's when the story unfolds, and there are references to, for example, Hank Aaron's home run record and things like that, and Don dolls and different items that will make it clear to the reader that that's where you are.
Time.
Well, a lot of people think that the book takes place in Alabama. In fact, it takes place in an unspecified location. I never say which state it's in. Now, it does take place in Andalusia is the name of the town, and Magnolia County is the name of the county. So there is an Andalusia in Alabama, but that's not the Andalusia of the story. I think people have just assumed that they're one and the same, but they're not. I actually had several towns in mind. I grew up in Marietta, Georgia, and I had that in mind. I lived in Greenville, South Carolina. I had that in mind. I lived in Morgantown, West Virginia. I had that in mind. I had Opelika in mind. I had a little bit of Auburn in mind. But all these different towns that I'd lived in, I took bits and pieces from all of them. And the setting is you see a city off in the distance, but then there are mountains on the other side. So it does fit that Greenville, South Carolina feel. Or even if you look at Marietta, like over where the Big Chicken is, you can see the metropolis of Atlanta in one direction, but then you can see the mountains in the other. And obviously Morgantown, West Virginia is something like that too. West Virginia is a mountainous region. So it was just a mix of all these different places where I'd lived.
And that's intriguing. Yeah. Okay, so I've got to ask you a question.
Okay.
So there's going to be a movie made about this.
I hope so. I hope so, because the contract has a great deal. I get all movie rights. So if there is a movie, I'd be in good shape.
So who are the characters, and who in Hollywood would play these characters?
Oh my goodness, I have never thought about that. But the narrator is someone named Cephas, or Kephas would be the pronunciation of the Greek. But his friends would call him Cephas, and that was a mix of the biblical name Peter, which means a stone, but also Bocephus, as in Hank Williams Jr. Yeah. So it was sort of a mix of both. Yeah. And he is an adult narrator looking back on his childhood. So it's a look-back novel, and he's telling the story of all the improbable encounters that his friends had and that he had, including fights with a boy named Ray, who's an out-of-town kid who comes in from Virginia, and he sets off a smoke bomb in the boys' bathroom at school, and events like these transpire. The the book opens with the story of these sort of mysterious neighbors who come in, and I won't give away what happens with them, but it's sort of a jolt to start the book with that. I think certain people who know me pretty well are going to be
I
shocked.
can't wait to read this.
Shocked when they read that first chapter and think, "Whoa, what's going on in his head? He's weirder than we thought." But
What lurks in there?
but the trial itself is a story of Greek tragedy. It ends in really Romeo and Juliet-esque fashion, and that's what the title is. A Glooming Peace This Morning is a line from Romeo and Juliet. So there's an intentional invoking of that play.
So who would play the couple in all?
Oh my goodness! Well, I don't know, because they'd be child actors. They'd be young child actors. I don't know who child actors are. I don't know. I'd have to imagine somebody that you'd shrink down into the past or something. The Benjamin Button thing.
Yeah.
Maybe you could shrink Brad Pitt back down to a kid.
I was thinking him. Angelina.
Yeah, that would help. Yeah, if you could get both of them
miniature.
together in a movie again, since they both hate each other now. If you could get them together in a movie, that would be a good selling thing. That would help.
Yeah.
That would help a lot.
So what's something surprising in the book? What can somebody take away?
Well, there are different themes: justice and injustice, love and hate, and
It's like you go from one emotion to another.
you do. There's a fine
Very
line
much
between love and hate. And actually, the narrator makes this point just in an offhanded way that because of the vulnerability involved with love, it can succumb to hate so easily, because love is a sacrifice of yourself. It's a giving yourself over to somebody else. And that's a very vulnerable state to be in. And so you open yourself up to being wounded when you love. And only when you find out that love is reciprocated is joy or ecstasy part of it. But if the reciprocation isn't there, you just get devastated. But I think the most shocking thing is what happens at the end of the story. So there are two characters, Sarah and Tommy, and they have sort of an illicit love affair.
I
And
saw this side of him before. It's all the numbers had to say to me.
economics. This is the literary side. This is
wonderful.
this is the deeper
I'm glad
side.
to see this.
But they both meet a tragic fate, and it's a sad. There's no hemlock, but there's no hemlock. But that would have been an interesting touch. But no, there's no hemlock. But they both meet a tragic fate, and it's probably pretty surprising. It's pretty surprising when it happens. But that will be the spoiler.
This is going to be terrible. Okay, so I'm going to get the book here, and then I'm going to be driving home looking at the book.
I have done that. I drove all the way. Should I confess this on air? I don't know. But I drove from Jekyll Island all the way to Auburn and read an entire novel while driving. I had to do it. It was back when I was in graduate school, and so I
You're fessing up, I'll bet.
You did it too.
I have done that, yeah. But I try to wait at stop signs and red lights, and then people honk behind me, move.
I thought it was easier than texting and driving, because
It is.
you just hold it up here, and
It's much easier
those
than
highways are pretty empty.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
I think this is just great. I can hardly wait to get my hands on it. So, in different ways, you can find this book as well. But I keep thinking movie.
Oh, I would love that.
It's going to be an audio, because a lot of folks like audio. They're in the car, whatever.
Yeah, sure. Well, I have not made any plans, and nor has the publisher, to my knowledge. But if a lot of people go out and buy it, maybe we would readjust those plans. I don't know.
Yeah, so you got a long drive. There you go. Don't do like we do. Do as we say.
Yeah. Actually, don't do as we say either.
No, not that either. So let's talk about some of your other writing.
Sure. Well, I think my first book was written while I was a graduate student at Auburn getting my PhD in English. And I had become fed up with what I perceived as a residual Marxism in English departments. And as somebody who was interested in economics, not actually an economist, but who spent a lot of time with economists and went to economics conferences, I was troubled by this emphasis on Marxism. And I thought, well, if it wasn't productive or successful or in any way good, in fact, it was a net negative in the economics world, the political world, the devastation. 100 million people dead to socialism and communism through direct killings, starvations, etc. then why would it be any better in literary criticism? It couldn't be any better. Why would it be any more useful? Not that it shouldn't be studied. It should be studied, of course, but it shouldn't be presented as the only viable form of economic literary criticism.
More like what not to do.
What not to do, yeah. So I wrote a book. It actually collected several essays together that presented market-based theories of literary criticism. And I called that Literature and the Economics of Liberty, and it's on it's Literature and Liberty, and it was on economic literary criticism. That was my first book, and I wrote it as a graduate student, and it made some of my professors pretty upset with me because they thought that if they weren't directly the target of this, that they were sort of indirectly the target, that I was complaining about what was going on in English departments, and there they were, the faculty in the English department where I was getting my doctorate, and they took offense. But I was able to get through that and earn my PhD, and I can't remember exactly the succession, which book came next, but I was able to repurpose my doctoral dissertation, which is on U.S. Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. and Ralph Waldo Emerson's influence on him, and write that as a book. And Bucknell University Press published that in, I think, 2015 or 16, somewhere in that range. And so in that range, I was publishing a lot. And so, as I say, I think I've now got 9. This novel's 8. 9 just came out, but it's an edition that I did with two other editors. So it's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of work.
There has. How do you edit, or do you let someone read what you've written and critique it, and then do you keep that in mind?
Oh yeah, definitely.
But without changing the whole meaning.
Yeah, with any kind of academic writing in particular, I submit those to journals, and some of them have gone through the peer-reviewed process, and then I get them back, and I have to get permissions from the journal to include portions from those pieces in the book that I'm writing. And that involves feedback not only from the journal editors, just to get it into the journal to begin with, but then when I get it back and I submit the book manuscript, the book itself is then peer-reviewed, and so I have another layer of peer review on top of what I'd already gotten for the journal. And so, yes, I get a lot of feedback, and some of it you ignore, but most of it I take into account, and I revise, and I try to do what the editors recommend, because they're typically experts, and we all have our blind spots, and they're able to see things that I can't see and offer perspectives that I don't have. And a lot of times, most of the time probably, they sharpen my writing, they add a dimension to the work that wasn't there before, and I feel very grateful for the feedback. I don't take feedback as criticism in any way. I enjoy it.
I like it, and I like it when our listeners actually send emails to me with suggestions.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really good.
That's right.
It's broadened my horizon a lot.
Well, imagine if you were a company. So people think about writers as if they're sort of divorced from the marketplace. Not at all. If you're a company and you have clients or customers coming up and saying, hey, we didn't like the way this happened, or could you do this? Well, if I'm running a business, I'm going to change that. Same as a writer. If a reader says, hey, I don't like this, whatever, well, I'm going to change whatever it is to accommodate the reader's taste so that I get more readers.
It's evident I'm not a writer, okay? Everybody knows I'm not. But I remember taking a class, Miss Ritchie, who's in the English at Geraldine High School, best teacher you could have had anywhere. And I didn't think so at the time. But anyway, she kind of had me coming out of being shy and that kind of thing. As a matter of fact, we had speech, and she said, the shyest person in this class is actually going to be the first one up there. And I said, I'll melt. So she kind of got me out of a lot of that. But
I can't imagine you shy, by the way.
I was. I got to send you a picture.
Oh,
I'm in the library. I'm holding a sign, and so this guy, Mr. Croft, he's sitting by me. We're both holding up a sign. Quiet, please. We're in the library. Silent. I'll send it to you. You'll get a kick out of it.
I want to see that.
But this is what she said to me once, and it made a lot of sense. So I was just kind of like rumbling. I was just like, with this thing I was actually putting together, and she said, "You're vomiting all over the table." I said, "Excuse me, what, ma'am?" You replied to this woman, and I got what she meant. So how are you putting it? Because his writing is absolutely fabulous. I never get bored with it, and I get bored easy. And so I'm not bored with his writings, but you're able to put something in a precise manner without vomiting all over the table. How do you do that?
Well, if you looked at my first draft, you'd see a lot of vomit, so to speak. What I do is I try to get everything down on the paper and get all my ideas down, and then I go back and cut, because I realize that most of those sentences I've written are not ready for readers' eyes yet. So the goal is to get it all down on paper first, and then I don't have to think through all the problems that I'm trying to wrestle with. And once I've got it on paper, that's when the revision. And you've heard it said a million times. You could probably attribute the quote to anybody, but good writing is really good revision, because revision is where all the magic happens. If you were to just finish that first draft and send it in, people would look and think, oh, this is terrible. But that's one problem I have, is wanting to revise, forever and ever and ever, and figuring out, okay, what point is this piece really ready to go? Is this article ready to be submitted to an editor? Because sometimes I write on time-sensitive matters. If I'm doing an op-ed or something like that, it needs to go out the door tonight, and at some point I just have to make a decision. Okay, I'm done revising as much as I'm going to revise. Hopefully their editors will take it from here and fix anything they see that I don't see. And, at a certain point, you just got to clean your hands of it and say, it's not mine anymore. It's for everybody else.
This is a question here that I wanted to ask you for a long time, because we're in the world of instant everything, instant grits, instant everything. And have readers changed? Because I'm from the old days, so I still like a book that I can turn the pages, I can mark up, I can highlight, I can do whatever I want with that book. I like that better than a nook.
Yeah,
much better. And I'd rather read a book than listen to an audit. I just rather do that. So is the younger generation changing? Do you have to be careful how you write a book for the newer generation?
So the answer is yes, but you'd be surprised that students at Troy University are preferring the old hard text. They want. They've had so much online stuff for so long that I think they realize that it's easier in some ways to have that textile.
To me, it is.
Yeah, they want
I feel like I get more out of the
feel the book, and they want to write in it.
I like to touch
highlight it, and it's easier to study that way than to pull up your computer and flip through. Now, in terms of writing, I do think that young people have a shorter attention span than they once had, and so I write shorter. My novel has shorter chapters. The paragraphs are a little bit shorter, because sometimes when people turn a page and they see a really long paragraph, they think, oh, I've got to read that whole thing. But if you have shorter paragraphs, people tend to race through them, and that makes a difference. So just presentation on the page. When I was going through the revision process, the magical revision process, I would find longer paragraphs and think, okay, could I make this one paragraph into 3, even if they're just 2-sentence paragraphs? Would that be more pleasing to the eye? Would that make someone flip the page faster? And I determined yes, and so I would make that change. But yeah.
That's what a lot of folks will say, and I've heard this said before, well, that was an easy book to read. And I just wondered if that was part of
That's certainly part of it, yeah. And there are authors out there who try to make their books difficult, who try to write the big, long books with the long paragraphs to make a literary statement. People still want to write literary fiction and read literary fiction.
Only.
Now, that's a pretty quick read. That's one that holds up very well. That one holds up quite well. It is still a page turner. So I think that's a great example of a book that has withstood the test of time and has proven to be a classic, even despite some of its time-bound references and depictions.
Absolutely. But there's just something about it. And I think health-wise, for our eyes, tests have been shown that people who are at the computer screen looking at the book, it's harder on your eyes than just turning the page.
Well, yeah, when I look at my computer screen for a long time, I can feel it in my head. I don't know scientifically whether they're actually rays coming out of there or not, but I can feel it. I can feel
they're coming to get you, Alan.
But when I read a book, I don't get that feeling. I don't feel labored up
there. And there's a piece. There's I will make time to read a book more so than looking at it on a computer.
Yeah, and plus on airplanes, when I'm working on the computer, I want to check my email, or I want to go check my bank account, or do something else that's distracting. When I've got the book, it's there in front of me, and I am immersed.
That's all about. We're going to have to go into a commercial break. Can you believe half the show just...
I can't believe it.
We'll be right back in just a few minutes. Y'all hang in there, okay? We'll be back. Let's talk about the economy.
Okay.
When we come back. I'm not going to let you out of here until we do that. Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you. At Lamone's Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of DeKalb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lamonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at Lamone's you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with Lamone's Mexican Restaurant. At Liberty Bank, we're all about community. Whether it's to help with a charity fundraiser or help families in need, toys at Christmas or a local football team, we're here for you. You see, we realize the importance of family. Sometimes it's to build a new home or necessary home repairs. We're here for you. If you like the feel of a small town bank with all the conveniences of a big city bank, we're here to serve you. You will find us at any of our convenient locations in DeKalb, Marshall, Etowah, and Blount counties in North Alabama. You can call and speak with any of our friendly staff at 256-659-2175 or check us out on the web at libertybankal.com. And thank you for your support of our community. Member FDIC Equal Housing Lender. Jeff McCurdy of the McCurdy Law Firm has been a public service of this area for over 10 years. McCurdy, a member of the Henniger City Council, serves as prosecutor for the town of Sylvania and was named public defender for the city of Rainsville. The McCurdy Law Firm is located at 17326 Alabama Highway 75 in Henniger to better represent his Jackson and DeKalb County clients. If you need to be represented by a true public servant with proven success, call Jeff at 256-996-8701 or send a private email to mccurdylawfirm@gmail.com. No representation is made that the legal services performed is greater than the legal services performed by other lawyers. The Hatter Cafe and Country Inn is nestled in the northeast corner of Alabama the Beautiful in the delightful town of Mentone. We're located on top of scenic Lookout Mountain near Little River and DeSoto State Park and located only 5 minutes from shopping and restaurants. There is also a nearby community walking path and golf course. We welcome everyone through the doors and we are committed to outstanding service for all guests. At the Hatter Cafe and Country Inn, we invite people from all walks of life to come and get away from it all, enjoy the open spaces, treetop views, fresh, clean air, and experience Southern hospitality at its finest. We look forward to hosting you. To reserve a special event, or if you would love a special getaway at the Country Inn, you can call us at 256-634-2018. We're back. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Talk Show, where truth matters. We are at the Gadsden Mall, and we are at Books A Million.
That's right.
It's a wonderful place to be. I'll just tell you, if most women blow money on jewelry and clothes, with me, it's books. I mean, it's a great way to travel. I didn't grow up in the best household, so it was pretty awesome because I would hang out at the library. I was class nerd, still am, and Pippi Longstockings. That I could take myself away in those books because she was always getting in trouble. First of all, it was made back years ago, like 100 years ago, and she would jump into a ship or something, just go somewhere. And she traveled the world. It's where you can take yourself where you're at somewhere else that you need to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I love coming into bookstores like Books A Million. I remember when I was in law school, I would go to a Books A Million to study, and I would sit in a little lounge chair, and I would read for about an hour, and then take a 5-minute break and browse books, and then read for another hour and browse books. I ended up spending a lot of money on other books while I was in there supposedly studying, but I really did study. But I've always loved books and being surrounded by books, and there's almost no better place than a bookstore to browse. And most people buy their books online now, but the one issue with that is you can't just wander around and find something that you weren't expecting to find.
And you can do that right here at Books A Million.
That's right.
Absolutely. You know, you remind me of my son Brad. And I bet your mom read to you before you were born.
He did. My mom and my grandmothers, both grandmothers, but my maternal grandmother in particular would read poetry to me.
I knew it. Because this is what my grandmother said. She said, you need to be reading to that baby. And this is back in the days, you know, if you're going to have a boy or girl. And I said, but it's not born yet. And she said, you need to read to it. It will know, and it will be a book reader if you will do that. And he is. He has a book. For Christmas, birthdays, or whatever, I always said, what will you do, son?
And that's how he does it. That's great.
He just loves commentaries, whatever it is, he wants to read it. So for you moms out there, haven't had a baby yet, read to that baby, and it will be very, very smart, and that baby will love reading.
Speaking of which, Donna, my wife right now is in St. Vincent's Hospital, and now, but the C-section's scheduled for Monday. But she's got some high blood pressure issues and things like that, so she's there being monitored, and I'm gonna be a new dad very, very soon.
Yeah, I almost feel like a grandmother in waiting.
I say new dad. Do you say new dad even if you're an old dad? Like this is number 4. This will be number 4. So yeah, okay.
You've earned
I'm
that
a new
right.
old dad or an old new dad, one of the two.
One of the two. And so you have 3 kids.
That's right. That's right. No, but there's supposed to be 4, so I'm excited. I'm excited.
Well, you're a good dad. And got some smart kids there. We're friends on Facebook, so I think
she follows.
And I thought this was really, and I think dads need to do this. I think you need to have date night with your daughter.
Yes.
And you do that.
Yes, we do that. Oh, she loves those. She loves getting that attention. You know, my son is always getting attention for his golf and his bassoon playing and all kinds of stuff. And she just loves doing dad stuff. And we just go out and have a daddy-daughter date. We used to go to Applebee's all the time because that's what she wanted to do. She just loved going to Applebee's. If that's what she wants to do, we're going to do that. But I usually let her decide where she wants to go, and she's so sweet. She's such a sweet girl.
You're being very smart about this as well, because now she will know how she should be treated on a date.
Well, that's a goal. So I have really set the bar high for somebody, because when I wake her up in the morning, I go wake her up, I pick her up out of bed, I carry her to the couch in the den, and I make breakfast for her and bring it to her on the couch. So I want to make sure that she has very high standards for any husband, and so yes, exactly, and I want whoever's out there to have to work hard.
So let me ask you a question. So when she does come to the dating season, and she will, whether you like it or not, and
I
before
don't like
she's
it.
40
I
years
don't
old,
like
I
it.
know what you're saying. I know what you're thinking right now. So are you going to be sitting there cleaning your gun when the guy comes?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. It will already be clean by the time he gets there. Right? It'll just be pointed.
You take good care of my daughter.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how she reacts to that. I remember when my brother and I were in high school, we had somebody come to the door to take my sister on a date, and he got to the house, and we ran in the other room and grabbed a bunch of weights, and we started lifting weights and yelling and screaming and yelling horrible things to each other and trying to make this kid so scared.
We better not mistreat her.
Yeah, the kid was probably 16 or something, 16 or 17, and we were either in or out of college. I'm 6 years older than my sister, so I guess I was.
Oh, she's
probably,
a baby
I was probably
sister.
out of. Yeah, she was a baby sister. I was the oldest, and then my brother, who was much bigger, was 2 years younger, but he was much bigger than I am. He's taller and much bigger. He was the big football guy, and so we would get there and lift weights and make all this noise to try to scare the guy that was at the door. And my sister would get so mad, but I think deep down she actually liked it. I think she liked it.
I pretended I did.
Yeah.
But I really did. It shows you being loved.
Yeah. Well, my brother was more intimidating than I was. I was scrawnier and skinny. I was tall, but I didn't have all the muscles that he had.
So let's talk economy.
Okay.
Okay, I'm freaked out about it. I'm just telling you.
Well, yeah, I don't think, you see projections and statements from the White House suggesting that the economy is in a good state, but
Not in my world.
not in most people's world. In particular, the Wall Street Journal had a very interesting article this past weekend about the amount of debt that Gen Z is in particular credit card debt, and the interest rates on credit card debt are astronomical. And so these young people are digging themselves into a hole from which they can't dig out. And compounding that problem is the tuition rates at universities. Universities have gotten astronomically expensive because of the ready availability of federal student loan money over decades, over half a century or more, in fact. Universities have hiked tuition rates, and they've hired very expensive administrators, and they've driven the cost of college up. So when my parents went to college, people could actually say, oh, I paid my way through college, I worked my way through college. You can't actually work your way through college anymore because of the cost of tuition. So not only are students graduating with credit card debt, but they're graduating with student loan debt, and then they can't get out and buy a job. And now, because of inflation, the Federal Reserve has set interest rates at such a high level that these young people can't buy houses. And even people like me who are looking at moving houses, I've got to deal with the interest rate levels, and I'm locked in at like a 3.1 in my current house, and I'm not exactly excited about leaving that behind for 7, 8, 9 or whatever we're at. And that's a problem that people feel. They feel the inflation. You can tell people, oh, inflation's transitory or inflation's not that bad. But I tell you what, they're going to buy gas and they're going to buy groceries, and they're going to know that, wow, no, it's not transitory. It's real. This is a real thing. They're going to go to the restaurants and look at how the price of a hamburger's gone up $2.
But it's gotten smaller.
And they've gotten
higher in
smaller.
prices.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
I mean, it's incredible.
It is.
Let's talk about some ways that people can actually combat that. And I'm going to say that by saying this. So this is what my son did and my daughter-in-law. So they buy this townhouse in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so he wanted to put it on a 30-year mortgage. And I was like, oh, I think I need to do 15. Because he did it on 30. But actually, he wound up being smarter than me about this. So he said, no, what we're going to do, we're going to make double payments on it. And they had a goal. We believe in goal setting in this family. So we had a goal set of having the house paid off in 10 years, not 30 years. Wound up having it paid off before their 10th wedding anniversary.
That's amazing.
Saved over $100,000 in interest. People don't educate folks on things like that.
No, that's right.
They only make $100 extra per month.
That's right.
Save off interest.
Just $100 extra on your payment per month. Never skip a payment, obviously. Never do anything like that. And if people are struggling with, for example, credit card debt, try to tackle the one with the higher balance first, and knock that off. And of course, make your timely payments on the lower balance. Some people say knock off the one with the lower balance first, and then focus on the higher one. I don't really know that one's better than the other, but
I would think the higher interest one would be the one.
I think so too. I also think it's mostly about goal setting and being intentional.
Yeah, you got to be
about
intentional about
eliminating
it.
that.
Now, I'll tell you something else. They were famous for. We go out to eat, and they would forget their wallets. They did that a lot, Alan.
Well, I can't, in good faith, sit here and advise that to people, but I think that's
Don't do that.
that's funny.
And we were happy too, because we were so proud they wanted to save,
Yeah,
And you can get yourself in. That's how a lot of divorces happen too.
Oh, it
Like
did.
one's a
Absolutely.
spendthrift, Well, Larissa just happens, they're two peas in a pod because she's just like him. I mean,
That's
they're
great.
exactly like that.
That's a match
But
made in heaven.
amazing that before your 10th wedding anniversary, you saved $100,000.
Absolutely. And people have trouble thinking about it that way because people like to think, oh, I earned $100,000. Ooh, $100,000 appeared in my bank account. They don't tend to think of, oh, I saved $100,000. I have $100,000 in my bank that wouldn't have been there had I not acted in this way. But if people did start thinking in that manner, they would save better.
That's a wonderful way to think. And so now instead of making this house payment, they're putting money to the side to buy land.
Oh, that's wonderful. And
So they'll be
land,
able to take care of that.
and
Because
land's a
they're
great
so
investment.
accustomed to it.
That's right.
But let's talk about credit cards.
Yeah.
And so I have a question for you. And
Okay.
this is not necessarily about credit cards, but school debt.
Okay.
And so is President Biden, is this kind of a false claim where he's going to, we're just going to zero out all college debt? Is that a false claim? Can that really happen?
Well, it depends on which types of programs they're zeroing out. So they've targeted some specific for-profit entities and people that studied at for-profit entities, and they had their student loan debt waived. There are programs that have been in place for a long time before he was in office. For example, there's the Public Student Loan Forgiveness Program, which is if you take out debt, let's say you went to medical school or I don't know, the law school. Law school's a good one. And rather than going into private practice, you went and became a government attorney for 10 years or worked for a nonprofit for 10 years. Then whatever you've paid, as long as you've paid your minimum payment over the course of 10 years, or whatever the qualifying payment is over 10 years, then any remaining balance will be forgiven. That's been in effect for a long time. But I think one thing the Biden administration did is they went back and retroactively said, okay, from this date back, no matter what you paid, as long as you made a payment, we're going to count all of those towards it. But then, there's this latest announcement of student loan debt, and I haven't dug into the details to see what qualifies you for that student loan debt forgiveness or what. But in general, I think that a lot of the student loan debt forgiveness is a wealth transfer to students who are actually going out making great salaries. They are lawyers, they are doctors, and they're making really good salaries, and they're having their debts forgiven, whereas somebody that maybe came from a poor rural community and dropped out of school after a year or after 2 years and never finished, they're stuck with their debt, and they're having to pay it off. And so they're the ones that are getting punished, and not the people that are now out there doing well and succeeding. So, well, and think about all the people who paid for their college, who were able to work their way through, or parents who paid for their kids to go through, and now, why would they do that? Like, they would never have done it had their kids been able to have it all forgiven for free.
This comes up with another question.
It's unfair.
So, okay, say I do get my college debt paid for, it's zeroed out. Now I'm going to think from this point on, I'll just run out big credit card bills.
Yeah, it creates horrible incentives. It creates bad incentive structures, and actually incentivizes malinvestment. So you're right. People think, well, it was easy to get through that. Yeah, I'll do it on credit card. And credit card, the interest on credit cards is way higher.
He robs a bank. They rob a bank, and they're successful with it this one time. They keep robbing banks. They're going to eventually get caught up with.
Well, and I used to do for a very short time when I was in private practice. I was a lawyer in Atlanta, and we did a lot of debt collections. We represented homeowners associations and condominiums associations and builders and real estate agents and property managers, and these people would inevitably deal with people who would incur debt to them, and so we would have to collect those debts. And it turns out that while there are some people that are very in a very rough situation and undergoing financial hardship, and you feel very bad for them, and they've struggled and they've had a hard life, there are others who are just professional cons, who are very wealthy. In particular, there was one guy that we sent a private process server out to his house, and he was in a gated house with a Corvette in the front, in the driveway, and he had just managed to rack up all this debt, spending on a bunch of different things, and he was just getting out of it and figuring out ways to elude creditors and living a lavish lifestyle when he was in debt to all these people. And that is unethical. And those are the types of behaviors that you really want the system, as it were, the legal system, to combat.
Knowing they can do that.
No, right, that's
because,
right.
I mean, you're sending the absolute wrong message. The correct message is work hard.
Right.
You can be a millionaire doing anything. I mean, you really can. If you know how to, I mean, you can be a trash collector.
Well, the biggest
And be a
thing
millionaire.
is living within your means. I think people tend to get house poor. They tend to buy houses that are on the highest end of what they can afford. And then when things go bad or they lose their job, they can't make the next mortgage payment, things spiral out of control. They say, well, I'll put this on a credit card. And next thing you know, the debt's ballooning. That's a dangerous way to live, but you can live very happily beneath your means. Henry David Thoreau, the transcendentalist author, his motto was simplify, and how liberating it is to simplify. Get rid of things you don't need. You don't need all this furniture, get rid of it. You don't need a big house, get rid of it. You don't need an expensive car, get rid of it. Live within your means, and you'll save yourself so much stress and live longer and be healthier because of it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of folks who do that. There is and think about some of the millionaires. There's a millionaire who lives in Anniston. You'd never dream this guy's a millionaire. He even wears a grass rope belt.
Yeah.
I mean, he never just, and he's as happy as he can be.
Yeah, sure.
And I mean, just, of course, his kids, they're a little different than he is. But he actually gained his status actually from working in a mill.
Oh, how about that?
But he was so frugal.
Yeah,
and
that's
very,
what it
very
requires.
frugal. They always had a garden and all these things. Which sounds like me, doesn't it? I don't have a grass rope, but anyway.
Well, I know a lot of people who meet that description. A lot.
And so able to put it back because, and I know you want to go overboard. You can go overboard both ways. But how important is it to save up a little bit? What if the grid goes down? I mean, what if? I mean, there are things that could happen.
It's absolutely essential to save, and not just have a savings account in cash, but have different assets spread across different investment vehicles. You could put it in gold and silver. You can put it in index funds, and I think basically mathematically, it's been proven that if you just put your money into a passive index fund that tracks, say, the S&P 500, it's going to outperform actively managed mutual fund where you've got a money manager, you're charging who is charging high fees, and they're trying to move the money around and change where your money is. If you just put it in a passively managed fund that tracks some index, you will do better over time. That's Warren Buffett's.
You have to be patient about those things.
Yeah, you got to be patient about it, and be wise about the index funds you put your money in. I've been a sharp critic of ESG investing. I think that if you put if you're investing in securities in a portfolio that has narrowed its parameters to limit what types of fields and industries can go into it. For example, we're not going to have oil and gas in there. We're not going to have tobacco. Or we're not going to have whatever generic bad industry you want to name in that fund. Well, you're going to underperform. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the basic conventional wisdom of investment is you need to diversify your assets and mitigate risk. And they go together. You mitigate risk by diversifying assets, and you diversify assets by mitigating risk. So they work hand in hand.
And more people are taking on second jobs. It's kind of like a hobby kind of a thing, actually. And it reminds me of my granddad. So we bought my granddad's farm. And I bought my inheritance. And nobody in the family wanted it, but I did. So it's 38 acres of just fun.
I love that.
You got to go to the pond sometime. You like to fish?
I do, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
With me and you, it'll turn into a competition. But anyway, we need to do that sometime. But my granddad had a goal set. It was $5,000 back in the 1930s when he bought this. Now, that was a lot of money back then. I know you're going 30, just $5,000. That was a bunch of money. So he had a job, actually had two jobs, and he said peanuts. He was a peanut farmer. Wow. Peanuts actually paid for the farm.
How about
2 years?
How about that? That's unbelievable.
We bartered a lot. But do you think we could run into an era where we're going to be bartering things?
Well, I think people do barter, and we don't
We just don't
really
call it
pay a
that.
lot. Yeah, we don't pay a lot of attention to it, but I think people will trade. They'll still trade cattle for this, or they'll trade a certain shipment of trucks for this or that. I think that's kind of stuff absolutely happens. People will trade properties, and it happens more than we think. We don't typically to talk about it in day-to-day
Well, if you're
conversation.
in a small community, like, hey,
Yeah,
I've been liking that tractor up there.
yeah,
Dude says, well, I like your truck.
yeah,
And so they can just trade.
sure.
But what does that do? I'd like to know a little more research about what that would do as far as taxes are concerned. If you made a profit or didn't make a profit, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
You need to
a
have
lot
that
of
checked
people
out up
do it.
there.
In the example that you just mentioned, there's probably just some sort of transfer of title,
They're
or
both
they
valued
may
at the
just,
same.
it depends on how they contract too. They may not even contract. It may be the old-fashioned handshake contract in that example, a truck for a tractor, and as long as they don't change their minds and some dispute doesn't happen, that's when you get to court and things get messy. And I've had to deal with with courts more than I'd like to, but I think this is a perfectly legitimate exchange, and some people, if you trade things of a certain level that's reportable income and goes on the taxes, and other people. I'm not a tax attorney, I'm not an accountant or anything like that, so I'm not giving any sort of advice on how that would work. But yeah, you need to make sure
You need to make sure, especially if
talk to your
if you're
accountant.
conservative like I am, it might be after you, so you might want to make sure all your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed. But my granddad was talking about back in the day, he was really good at raising peanuts. I mean, I don't know what he did, and tomatoes. He was really good at that. But then another farmer down the road would have like eggs all over the place, so they would just swap out,
Yeah.
And different things like that. So,
Well, that's
something to think about.
that's the origin of money. Eventually, people figured we need a medium of exchange to represent these transactions, and coins are rare, and therefore they can be valued as scarce, and we'll use those as our medium of exchange to stand in place for the cattle, or to stand in place for the truck, or whatever exchange good was at issue.
Let me ask you a question. This is to rare coins.
Okay.
Like a quarter or 50-cent piece might cost you $10,000, whatever.
Yeah.
Is that a wise investment when it really comes down to the nitty gritty? Is that a wise thing to do?
I think for some people, yes. I think it depends on the person. I think certain
Oh, they
people
have great coffee here, by the way.
Oh, do they? Yes, I do. I hear
I'm
the
about to
coffee
go get
good
some
night.
of it.
Yeah, it depends on the person. If some people are in a better position to unload assets as they need. So, for example, some people like to collect art. Well, I'm not in a position to collect high value art. I don't know how to sell it. But if I were somebody that were part of the art market and knew how
Connoisseur
to,
of that.
yeah,
Almost
you
like
can.
a wine.
Oh, absolutely. And so art would not be a great investment for someone like
You'd have
me.
to really know it.
You'd have to know it, but it might be for someone else. Same, I think, with rare metals and coins. You sort of have to know what it is you're doing in order to make it a good investment. If you do know what you're doing, yeah, I think it is a good investment. And
It's that and anything. So let me ask you another question. This was back in the Depression, so I love research, you know that. So I've done some research on millionaires that came out of the Great Depression. If you're able to find something, I mean, it's got to be something totally unique. You can make a business work in a bad economy.
oh yeah, I think that the people who you mentioned earlier, people who are wealthy, and it's surprising when people learn that that person is wealthy. They typically find things that other people don't want to do because it deals with, for example, waste management. Who wants to deal with waste management? That's
They
terrible.
zig when everybody else is
But
zagging.
it is absolutely necessary. Someone's got to do it. People have got to deal with sewage. People have got to deal with plumbing. People have got to deal with stuff that other people don't want to do. And if you can learn how to operate a business based around things that people don't want to do because it's unpleasant, then you're going to fulfill a very essential need for the community and society. And people, that's what wealth is people give value. They pay for things that they put value in, and so
And I wanted to mention this. We just had a show a few days ago, and it was about malls. What kind of business could I have at a mall? I thought of a good one. I'm giving you some ideas. So I think a good one would be cell phone. Cell chargers and stuff like that. But have a charging station and charge for it. But give people a $5 gift card. That they could. That way, they're getting something out of it, and you are too. You don't have folks who are just using your charger.
Yeah, or you could put a little quarter in to charge, and then every 10th person, you just don't know what number you are, but when it comes in or whatever, every 100 person.
Just think about what nobody else is doing. Think about an inconvenience you have in life, and you think, man, if there was a store that did that, I would. Then you be the one to start the store.
You should invent the phone that just self-charges, and we don't need these chargers anymore. That's what I'm looking for. I'm tired of having to charge phone. It's coming. They probably have the technology already. They just haven't released it.
Absolutely. Oh boy, so many fun things to do. I mean, really, just use your brain is all you have to do. So I wanted to talk to you about it's about. You remember the phrase? It's about the economy.
Yeah. That was the Bill Clinton campaign.
Do you think we're in that shape right now as a country?
I think so. I really do. I think a lot of people feel the effects of inflation. They feel it personally. They feel it every day, and they look at things that are going on college campuses, some of the tent encampments and the protests, and they think, this doesn't represent my everyday reality. This is not what I want to be a part of.
My parents would be asking, why do you have time to do that? You're not studying.
What about your final exams? Yeah, exactly. This is final season.
I don't think it's necessarily students.
Well,
I think there's some that are in it just
I think there are some students, and keep in mind that these encampments and protests are taking place typically.
Things that you just kind of have to stretch together.
Well, and it all started at Ivy League campuses, so you've got a special type of student already. Students that are probably a little bit self-important, but also politically engaged. And I really kind of like this legislation that Senator Brett and Senator Tuberville have suggested that would prevent the students who are getting arrested in the protests from having their student loans forgiven. That may put a stop to the excesses, because you can protest all you want when your First Amendment rights, if you do it lawfully, but if you commit crimes, you have no First Amendment right to commit crimes. You can't vandalize, you can't harass somebody, you can't assault somebody, you can't destroy private property. Those are not legitimate expressions of speech. There are legitimate expressions of speech if you are in a public space, and public institutions can place reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions on your speech. But if you're one of these people committing crimes, absolutely, you should get arrested. And if there's legislation out there,
some respect, for goodness sakes. Absolutely.
And
we've got to go.
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
An hour is. We're going to have to plan a 2-hour show next time. We've got to do that. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you, Donna. I enjoy it. Thanks for having me on the show.
I enjoy the face-to-face. I don't mind the online stuff. I'm okay with that. I'm not that old. But I do like being. I think this is just absolutely awesome. And congratulations on that birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, C-section scheduled for Monday. As long
Girl
as
or boy?
Boy. 3 boys and a girl is what I'll have.
Yeah, you need to have another boy to take care of that dog.
That's right. Extra reinforcements is what I like to
There
call.
you go. And thank you for watching. You're the reason I do this. Absolutely. Send more suggestions, any you would like. I'll be glad to look at them. And I do read every single email. I even check the spam folder.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm encouraged when you do that. Send an email anytime to donna@donnasedge.com. And you need to check out this book one more time. Where can they find us?
This is a Glooming Peace This Morning, and it's available at my website, allenmendenhall.com, or just on amazon.com.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Have a good rest of the day.